I'm outside St. James Palace in London, where at the height of World War II, Allied governments pledged to hold the Nazis to account for their brutal war crimes in Europe. At the time, the idea that Nazi leaders would actually face justice for the atrocities of the war was a long shot. But the trials at Nuremberg just a few years later showed that it was possible.
If you were to say that they are not guilty, it would be as true to say that there has been no war.
Today, as prosecutors gather evidence of thousands of war crimes allegedly committed by Russian troops in Ukraine, a growing number of legal and political figures are calling for a new Nuremberg-style tribunal to hold Russia's leadership to account for one specific war crime they say is slipping through the cracks: the crime of aggression. I spoke to Philippe Sands, a specialist in international law. Who would be held accountable for the crime of aggression?
It's a leadership crime. It is only committed by those who have the power, the capacity to decide to wage or continue a manifestly illegal war. What that means in the context of Ukraine, you're talking about Mr. Putin, the Minister of Defense, the top military officials, the top intelligence people.
Ukraine has asked dozens of countries to support the creation of a special tribunal, and it's already been backed by legal experts, the European Parliament, and public figures like former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown.
What's happening at the moment is that the International Criminal Court, to its great credit, at the request of 40 countries, is now investigating crimes against humanity and war crimes. But what it can't do is what a special tribunal could do, probably a lot more quickly, prosecute the crime of aggression.
Would Putin himself be held accountable for war crimes apart from the crime of aggression if this tribunal was not set up?
I think it's possible that you can find evidence that links Putin directly to war crimes, crimes against humanity. But there's absolutely no doubt that Putin is guilty of this initial crime, what the Nuremberg trial authors called the initial and fundamental and supreme crime, the crime of actually planning an aggression against a sovereign state.
You've dealt directly with Vladimir Putin in your time as British Prime Minister. How does he operate?
The only thing he will understand is if there is a strong response from the West, and part of the strong response is to tell him that he cannot escape with impunity for crimes that he himself has committed and is responsible for directing.
But some countries, like the United States, have not backed a new special tribunal. James Goldston, the executive director of the Open Society Justice Initiative, explains why.
It is no surprise that major powers, including the United States, may look with some trepidation at prosecutions for the crime of aggression, given their own historical activities and given their own desire to preserve freedom of action going forward. There have absolutely been concerns raised about how the crime of aggression would be prosecuted. Nonetheless, I think it's clear that this conflict has been a turning point for many, including in Washington.
80 years ago, countries committed to an idea of international justice that came together in the trials at Nuremberg. Now Ukraine is asking that they do it again.